Hi everyone, my name is Alex Franke and I'm Miss Kentucky and I'm here to read you a spectacular story today. It's called The Most Wonderful Dream and it is a fantastic book. I can't wait for you all to experience this with me. Kentucky is a place where labor has dignity, music is handmade, family is cherished, and people are the greatest resource. Kentucky is a peaceful land where neighbors share favorite dishes and look forward to harvest time, a time where school resumes and basketball season comes around. Kentucky is a place where people gather at homecomings and family reunions, at ball games and band camps, at all-day meetings and dinners on the grounds near white churches with tall steeples that paint the landscape with enduring beauty. Kentucky is a place of timeless farms and noble farmers where season after season they labor together, growing food, families, and faith in the summer sunshine. And somewhere in the middle of it all lives a very smart little boy with a dream so big and wonderful, if you knew about it, even you would want to see it come true. This is his story. I'll do my best to show you the pictures. Billy Alexander needed no one to wake him up, even though he had never slept a wink the night before. "Today is a big day," he said under his breath. "A wonderful day indeed." It was the first day of summer break for young Billy Alexander, and today he was going to his favorite place in the whole wide world. "Today, if Mom and Dad will just wake up, I'm going to spend the summer at Granddad's Kentucky farm," he said to his dog Banjo. Even though it was still dark outside, Billy was already dressed, sitting on the edge of his made-up bed and staring at the clock on his cell phone. At last, he heard the high-pitched singing voice of his mother. "Billy, time to get up!" Like a streak of lightning, he ran for the door, grabbed his bulging suitcase, put on his favorite cap, the blue one that said, "Young Farmer," and ran down the stairs into the bright kitchen. Banjo was right on his heels and crashed helplessly into the back door before he could get stopped. "Wow," Billy's mother exclaimed. "Looks like you two are ready to go." "Oh, yes, we are," Billy said breathlessly. "I cannot wait to see Addie. Banjo and I are going to have the best summer ever." She poured cold milk over a heaping bowl of cornflakes sprinkled with strawberries and walnuts. "I like milk, and guess what, Mom?" Billy said as white milk splashed on the crisp cereal flakes. "There are farmers right here in Kentucky with herds that give, on average, 29,000 pounds of milk per cow every single year. Compared to 1950, when they were getting less than 5,000 pounds of milk per cow, that is awesome." "Billy Alexander, you make my head spin," his mother said, shaking her head and laughing. Billy was like the Wikipedia of farm facts. He loved school and reading, but he especially liked surprising his mom with his latest discoveries about farming. He scooted into his seat and plunged the spoon into the bowl of cereal while Banjo sat right at his elbow, tongue hanging out and hoping for a treat. "Don't forget to give thanks," his mother said just in time. Billy let go of the spoon, folded his hands, and began to pray. "Dear Lord, thank you for Mom and Dad, Grandma and Granddad, Addie and Banjo, and summer break. And God, thank you for farmers and food. Amen." Billy always prayed for farmers. With that, he shoved an overloaded spoonful into his wide, grinning mouth while his mom slid 2 slices of wheat toast, covered in strawberry jelly, in his direction. "Drink your apple juice," his mom said. Billy grabbed the glass of juice and poured it down in a single gulp. "Hey, Mom, do you know how many apples it takes to make a cup of apple juice?" "4," Billy asked without giving her a chance to answer. "And Mom, guess how many gallons of water it takes to grow an apple? You won't even believe it," he said, shaking his head. "It takes 17½ gallons of water to make one single apple. Wow. That means it took about 70 gallons of water to make my glass of juice." "Fortunately, here in Kentucky, we have wonderful apple orchards and plenty of fresh water," his mom said. The neighborhood was still sleeping when Billy's father loaded everything into the car. When the last car door closed, Billy's dad asked, "Everybody buckled in?" "Everybody except Banjo," Billy said, laughing. The car pulled carefully onto the busy street, and at last, summer break was underway. Mile by mile, the city disappeared behind them. Ancient limestone fences leaned the way, and along that narrow blacktop road, while just beyond, beautiful horses stared at passing cars. Crossing the river was like going to another world, the world he loved most of all. Fog filled the Kentucky River Valley as they waited their turn to board the quaint old ferry at Valley View. For Billy, crossing the river was like going to another world, the world he loved most of all. Billy had spent every summer at the farm since he was a baby. All of his favorite memories were there. As the car rolled down the highway, Banjo rearranged himself so he could lay his head on Billy's knee. While the radio played in the background, Billy recalled some of his favorite things about the farm. He remembered the smell of fresh-cut hay, the soft chicks he often held in his hands, the bumpy rides in Granddad's old pickup, and the hours spent daydreaming with his best friend, Addison Stone, who lived on the farm next to his granddad. Billy smiled. After a while, Billy spoke up. "Hey, Dad, Friday at school, my friend Carl said that he and his sisters would not have enough to eat this week now that school's out. That's awful." "That's terrible," his dad expressed agreement. "It is terrible, but not surprising to me, Billy," his mother responded. "I recently heard that 1 in every 5 Kentucky children don't have enough food. When I get back to the city later today, I'll call your teacher and see if I can do something to help Carl and his sisters." "Thanks, Mom," Billy said quietly. "So I was reading last night and saw an article that said we lost 22 million acres of farmland in the U.S. between 97 and 2007. That's kind of scary, don't you think? Is that the reason why families like Carl's are hungry?" "That may be part of it," she answered, "but there are bigger issues. Still, you need to talk to your granddad. He tells me that new technologies, disease, and insect-resistant crops, and all kinds of improvements in farming, things like genetics and nutrition and science, are enabling fewer farmers to accomplish more and more on less acres. He seems very hopeful." Just then, the car began to slow. It turned onto the gravel lane that led to the simple farmhouse. Up ahead, Billy's grandma was leading a cow with twins up the lane to a pasture closer to the house. In the distance, Billy saw his granddad, perched high upon the tractor, waving his hat to get Billy's attention. "Stop!" Billy yelled excitedly. The car rolled to a stop and Billy dashed away, running and leaping over piles of fresh plowed dirt until he fell breathless into his granddad's open arms. Granddad leaned back and examined him head to toe. "My goodness, Billy," he exclaimed. "I think you've grown at least 4 inches taller since Christmas." Billy couldn't stop smiling as they walked to the house. Then, at that very moment, he heard his best friend Addison screaming, "Billy! Billy!" And there she was, jumping up and down on the front porch. When they reached the house, Granddad motioned to Billy's parents with his big, calloused hands. "Let's go up on the porch and sit a spell. Are y'all hungry? Did you get this boy anything to eat on your way? Will you be spending the night?" Billy's mom interrupted the flow of questions. "Daddy, we can't stay," she said as she hugged him. "We're not the ones on summer break. We have to get back to the city. Duty calls." She was saying goodbye to everyone as Billy took his suitcase in the house. When he got back, the car was already moving away in a cloud of dust as it rolled slowly back to the city. Billy and Addie were grinning at each other when Grandma noticed. "Are you two scheming already?" "We want to take a ride on Old Joe," they said in unison. "Please, please, please." "Oh, no," Grandma answered. "That horse is so big and so tall and—" "You could have added so old and so slow to your description," Granddad chuckled. "You don't need to worry about that horse, Grandma. Old Joe is as gentle as he is big. Besides, I told Billy next time he came, he could ride him, and well, it's time for me to keep my word. I'll go with them and they'll be fine." His bright eyes twinkled as he winked at Grandma and said, "Go ahead, Billy, call him. He'll come for you." Billy cupped his hands around his mouth like he had seen Granddad do and called out, "Ooh-wee! Ooh-wee! Come, Joe, come!" In the distance, the old horse lifted his massive head from grazing and began moving lazily in the direction of the excited pair. "Look, Billy, you did it," Addie giggled. "He's coming! He's coming!" Grandma disappeared inside and quickly reappeared with a canvas bag in her hand. "Here, Billy," she said, "I've got some snacks." Thanks, Grandma, Billy said, pulling the wide strap of the bag over his shoulder. Come on, Addie. Together, they leaped from the porch and ran toward the barn as Banjo ran with them. While they were waiting on the horse, Granddad caught up, and soon Old Joe got there too. Without instruction, he came in close to an old wooden loading chute by the barn, stopped, and stood perfectly still. Granddad attached a soft rope to the halter and gave Billy instructions to climb from the loading chute onto Joe's back. When Billy was settled into place, he motioned for Addison to climb on behind him. Joe never moved. Okay, Addie, Billy said, put your hands around my waist and hold on tight. Holding on to the bridle, Granddad clicked his tongue and said, Come up, Joe. Joe lunged gently forward. Granddad and Old Joe moved steadily along the mostly grassy lane. They continued on until they came to a stop on a high ridge overlooking everything. The farm spread out before them like a patchwork quilt of yellows and greens and lavenders. The cloudless sky was soft and blue. In the valley below, they could see tiny houses and barns, fields of half-grown corn and fields freshly plowed, awaiting their seed. Newborn calves dotted the deep green meadows where fat cows gorged themselves on tall grass. Treetops swayed in the gentle breeze. Billy breathed in deep and filled his lungs with fresh air. Do you smell that, Addie? He asked. Yes, indeed. That is the smell of life. Did you know that U.S. farmers raise nearly 20% of the world's beef with only 9% of the cattle? Farmers like Granddad are growing more and more livestock on less land than ever before in history. And get this, 97% of farms are family-owned, just like this one. He took another deep breath and said, Yes, indeed, this is how life smells. It smells a lot like cow chips to me, Addie said, giggling. Granddad chuckled and said, Here, let me help you kids down. This is a perfect spot for us to give Joe a rest and see what your grandma put in that bag. The cows stared curiously as they slid down from the big horse and sat cross-legged together in soft grass as Granddad sorted through the big canvas bag. There were apples and pears, jelly biscuits left over from breakfast, and several bottles of spring water. You kids take whatever you want, Granddad said as he took a big bite out of one of the biscuits. This one's for me. Old Joe had moved a few feet away to where the grass was deeper and started grazing again. Billy took apples from the bag, gave one to Addie, and then took a bite of his own. I love coming here, Billy said, to no one in particular. I can't imagine what it would be like to live on a farm all the time. Well, I can, Addie said, smiling. 3 words describe life on the farm. They are fun, fun, and more fun. Anytime Addie spoke, you could hear a smile in her voice. I know they say farm work is hard, and you say it's noble and important, and Mom calls what I do chores. But Billy, I don't feel like they're chores at all. I like feeding chickens and gathering eggs. I like getting fresh food from the garden and helping Mom can green beans, pickled beets, tomatoes, and sweet corn. I really like going with Dad to steal honey from the beehive, and I like climbing the apple tree to pick my own special apple. To me, farming is an endless adventure. She laughed out loud. Let's just face it, Mr. Alexander, her face shined with joy. I am a country girl, and country girls are bound to be farmers. And he listened to the kids. Granddad looked over his farm and smiled. Addie, just hearing about how much you like farming makes me want to be a farmer even more, Billy said wistfully. Really? Addie said. I thought you might think I was kind of old-fashioned. No, I don't, Billy replied seriously. You are going to be a great farmer. Besides, there is nothing old-fashioned about farming. The advancement in farming is mind-boggling. A farmer today can grow 120% more soybeans, 230% more corn, and 200% more wheat compared to a farmer in 1960. And listen, Addie, the same thing is true for chickens. A hen today can lay about 276 eggs each year, which is 60% more than in 1950. And broiler chickens now produce 80% more meat. Farmers are learning more and getting better every day. Addie, it is not old-fashioned. Farming now is high-tech, cutting edge, and super amazing. Addie stood and put her hands on her hips and said, "Well, Mr. Alexander, it looks like this girl is going to be a super farmer." Banjo barked and Billy clapped his hands in approval. "It does have a nice ring to it," Billy said. "Addison Stone, super farmer." They laughed and laughed. And while they laughed, Banjo chewed on a stick. Inspired by what he was hearing, Granddad turned toward them and said, "A lot more grows on a farm than chickens, cows, and corn. And just listening to you two reminds me how true that is on this farm. Farming is about more than making a living, too. Farming is a way of life. Here on the farm, we grow food, but we also grow families. The things for which I'm most thankful for are not out there somewhere in a field, but right here next to me. I'm so proud of you kids." As they had talked, unnoticed by the kids, rain clouds had drifted in from the west and filled the once cloudless sky. Granddad said, "Hey kids, we better get back to the house before the rain gets here." The kids jumped to their feet and quickly gathered everything back into the bag. The wind stirred more intensely, signaling that things were changing up rapidly. Granddad helped each of them onto Old Joe and turned him toward the home. His steps were a little quicker as they scrambled to beat the rain. Distant thunder and the hurried pace caused Addie to squeeze Billy's waist a little tighter than before. By the time they had set Old Joe free, large drops of rain were falling like marbles into the dust. Banjo danced in wonder around the kids as they lifted their arms high and opened their mouths wide to let the rain fall onto their tongues and faces. As the rain fell even harder, they ran in circles, in no real hurry to get to the house. Just as they leaped onto the porch, the heavens opened and it began to pour, making a deafening sound on the porch's metal roof. A few steps behind, Granddad rushed up the steps, out of breath and dripping wet. He laughed at the scene and turned away just in time as Banjo shook himself, giving everyone an unwanted shower. Hearing all the clatter, Grandma came through the screen door with an armload of towels. "Well, aren't you a pretty bunch?" she said, giving each one a towel. As she turned to go back inside, Billy heard her say faintly, "Thank you, God, for the rain. We sure needed it." Once inside, Granddad went straight to his rocker, sat down, and began to take off his work boots. Billy and Addie went to the other side of the living room, where they sank down deep into the soft, plush couch. Grandma headed off into the kitchen and began preparing dinner. Granddad leaned back in his rocker and was soon lulled to sleep by the rhythm of the rain on the old tin roof. "Addie, I'm not sure if you know it, but I'm going to be a farmer too." "Wow, that's so cool, Billy. You and me, super farmers. We'll wear masks and capes and save the world just like real superheroes." The room filled with her laughter. "Well," Billy said with his most serious-sounding voice, "my reason for becoming a farmer is not because I'm looking for adventure, and it's not because I want to have fun, even though farming can be a lot of fun. Addie, I actually know kids who don't have enough food to eat. I've heard about people in foreign lands struggling to get food, but this is right here, in my school, and it's my friend Carl and his sisters." You could hear the concern in his voice. Billy twisted in his seat and continued without noticing that his grandma was now standing in the doorway, taking it all in. "Addie, the need is way too big for two farmers, even super farmers." You could feel his intensity. "This will require all of us working together. My dream is to plant more than corn and soybeans. I want to plant farms and young farmers all over Kentucky. We will think of farms as seeds, growing and multiplying in every valley and on every hillside all over the bluegrass land. If you will accept it, Addison Stone, this is our mission." "I accept, Billy Alexander. I accept." Addison was ecstatic. "Listen, Addie, the average farmer in Kentucky is 58 years old." Addie's mouth fell open in disbelief. "Really? Do our parents know that?" she asked. "And get this," Billy continued, "about 10,000 people become 65 years old every day in America. Addie, this is a crisis. Who will take the place of farmers like Granddad?" Addie jumped to her feet. We will! We will! We'll do it! We will become farmers like Granddad and recruit young farmers and plant farm seeds everywhere and feed kids like Carl and save the world. Oh, Billy, this is so exciting! Addie's mind was racing. Billy Alexander, this is the most wonderful dream I've ever had. When do we start? What do we do first? Oh, Billy, dreams change everything, and a dream like this can change the world for good. While Billy and Addie were pondering their dream, Grandma said, Hey, everybody! Thanks to a farmer, it's time to eat. The end. I hope you enjoyed our story today. I know I certainly did, but this was a fantastic one. Thank you so much to Kentucky Farm Bureau for making a book like this possible. I hope you all enjoyed story time.